The council chamber shook as the warlord's fist slammed against the obsidian table. "You dare bring this before me?" Carvax roared, his 3 eyes blazing at the trembling scout. "One human? You interrupt the war strategy for one pathetic human?" The scout's scales rippled with fear. "Commander, you don't understand. It's him. It's Jake Morrison." The room went silent. Queen Thessara rose from her throne, her violet skin suddenly pale as moonlight. Her elegant fingers gripped the armrest so hard the metal groaned. "That's impossible. Morrison died at the Upsilon massacre." "We confirmed it. The reports were wrong, my queen," the scout whispered. "He's alive, and he's heading straight for the fortress." Thessara's mind raced back 15 cycles. The human who had single-handedly destroyed 3 of their battle cruisers. The warrior who had walked through plasma fire like it was rain. The legend who had turned the tide at Arcturus Station when humanity had been hours from extinction. "How many ships does he have?" Carvax demanded. "None, sir. Troops. He's alone." Carvax laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Then we'll vaporize him from orbit." "We tried," the scout said. 6 strike teams, 4 orbital bombardments. He's still coming." The Queen's communications officer burst through the doors, his breath ragged. "Your Majesty, incoming transmission. It's from Morrison. He's requesting to speak with you directly." Thessara's heart hammered in her chest. She had studied every battle Morrison had fought. She had watched the footage of him tearing through their elite guards like paper. She had seen him survive things that would have killed any of her best warriors 10 times over. "Put him through," she commanded, her voice barely steady. The hologram flickered to life. Jake Morrison stood in the middle of a scorched battlefield, smoke rising around him. His armor was battered, covered in the blue blood of her soldiers. His face was hard, scarred, and his eyes held something that made even Thessara's centuries of combat experience feel inadequate. "Queen Thessara," he said calmly, "I'm coming for the prisoners you took from Colony 7. You have 1 hour to release them unharmed." Carvax stepped forward. "You're surrounded by 50,000 troops, human. You're one man." Morrison's expression didn't change. "I know. That's why I'm giving you a chance to surrender them peacefully." The transmission cut. Thessara sank back into her throne, her mind calculating odds, strategies, outcomes. Everything came back to the same conclusion. "Evacuate the fortress," she whispered. "What?" Carvax spun to face her. "My queen, we have an entire army." "And he's Jake Morrison," she screamed, her composure finally shattering. "Do you understand what that means?" "He doesn't fight battles. He ends them. Evacuate now, or we'll lose everything." The alarms began to wail as her command rippled through the fortress. Morrison was coming, and legends didn't die easily. The evacuation sirens wailed through the fortress corridors, but Carvax wasn't moving. His pride burned hotter than his survival instinct. "No," he growled, slamming his clawed hand on the tactical display. "I didn't conquer 17 systems by running from one human. My queen, with respect, you're letting fear cloud your judgment." Thessara turned, her eyes flashing with anger and something deeper, terror. "Fear keeps us alive, Carvax. Arrogance got Commander Vrath killed, and Warlord Kren, and the entire 7th Fleet. Those were different circumstances. Morrison was always the circumstances." She pulled up a holographic file, her fingers shaking. "Battle of Kepler Ridge. Morrison held a supply depot against 2,000 soldiers for 6 days, alone. When reinforcements arrived, they found him standing in a mountain of our dead. Hadron Outpost. He infiltrated a dreadnought, killed the captain, and flew it into our command carrier. He survived the explosion by riding debris through re-entry. Carvax studied the files, his confidence wavering. These reports must be exaggerated. I wrote half of them myself, Thessera said quietly. I was there at Arcturus. I watched him fight. It's not just skill. It's something else. Something we don't have. Meanwhile, 6 kilometers from the fortress, Jake Morrison moved through the canyon like a ghost. His helmet display tracked the enemy patrol patterns, the automated defenses, the sniper positions on the ridge. All predictable, all breakable. He checked his ammunition. 3 magazines left for his rifle, 2 for his sidearm, 4 grenades. Not ideal, but he'd worked with less. The first guard tower never saw him coming. Morrison scaled the cliff face in 90 seconds, his augmented muscles barely straining. The sentry turned just as Morrison's blade found his throat. No sound, no alert, just efficiency. He took the guard's plasma rifle and kept moving. Inside the fortress, Lieutenant Zara coordinated the evacuation, her mandibles clicking with stress. Transport ships at 60% capacity. We need more time. Time is what we don't have, Thessara replied, watching the perimeter feeds. Where is he now? Last sighting was Grid 7 Alpha, but that was 4 minutes ago. He's gone dark. Carvax stepped beside her, his earlier bravado cracking. How does one human move through our sensor nets undetected? Because he trained against our technology for years, Thessara said. He knows our systems better than we do. Every weakness, every blind spot. An explosion rocked the eastern wall. Contact! A voice screamed over the comm. Eastern defense battery is down. We have static. Thessera's blood ran cold. Get those prisoners to the transport pad now. I want them off this planet in 5 minutes. But Carvax was already moving to the armory, rallying his personal guard. Enough running. If Morrison wants a fight, I'll give him one he won't forget. Deploy the Crimson Battalion to the eastern sector. Heavy weapons, kill corridors. We'll bury him. You're making a mistake, Thessara warned. No, my queen. I'm making history. When I kill the legendary Jake Morrison, my name will echo through the galaxy. He stormed out, taking 300 of her best soldiers with him. Thessara wanted to stop him, but part of her hoped he was right. Maybe the reports were exaggerated. Maybe Morrison was just a man who'd gotten lucky. Maybe. Another explosion shattered the southern wall. Then the western barracks erupted in flames. Morrison wasn't attacking one position. He was everywhere at once. How is this possible? Zara gasped, watching multiple breach points light up across the tactical display. Thessara knew the answer, and it terrified her. Morrison wasn't just fast or strong or skilled. He understood warfare at a level that transcended species. He could read a battlefield like poetry, anticipate movements before they happened, turn any advantage into a weapon. He was what humanity called a natural, born for combat, raised by conflict, perfected through war. And he was inside her fortress. The lights flickered as the main generator went offline. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in crimson light. Through the chaos, Thessara heard Carvax's voice over the command channel, full of rage and denial. All units converge on Central Plaza. We have him cornered. But Thessara knew better. Morrison wasn't cornered. He was exactly where he wanted to be. The hunt had begun, and her people were the prey. The Central Plaza became a killing field in seconds. Carvax's Crimson Battalion poured into the open courtyard, weapons raised, scanning for movement. 300 elite soldiers, the finest warriors in the Thessaran Empire, armed with plasma cannons and ion rifles. They moved in perfect formation, covering every angle, every shadow. Morrison dropped from the ceiling support beam like death itself. His rifle barked twice. 2 officers fell before their fingers reached the triggers. He threw a grenade into the left flank, rolled behind a support pillar as the explosion tore through armor and flesh. Plasma bolts chased him, superheating the air, melting stone where he'd been a heartbeat before. He didn't stop moving. A soldier rounded the corner, and Morrison's blade was already there, punching through the weak point in his chest plate. He grabbed the dying warrior's cannon, fired it one-handed into the advancing squad, then dropped it and drew his sidearm. 3 shots. 3 headshots. Perfect accuracy while sprinting. "Spread out!" Carvax roared. "Don't cluster. Use the..." Morrison's rifle round took the soldier next to him in the throat. The warlord dove for cover, his earlier confidence shattered. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution, and his troops were the condemned. Above, in the command center, Thessara watched the feeds with growing horror. Her tactical display showed red icons winking out one after another. 30 soldiers down. 40. 50. Morrison moved through them like a surgeon, every movement deliberate, every shot necessary, nothing wasted. "The prisoners are aboard the transport," Zara reported, her voice shaking. "But Morrison's between us and the landing pad." "Then we wait," Thessara said, unable to look away from the massacre below. "We don't engage. We don't provoke. We let him do what he came to do." In the plaza, Morrison's ammunition counter hit 0 on his rifle. He dropped it without hesitation, pulled a fallen soldier's energy blade from a corpse, and charged into the next wave. The blade hummed as it cut through armor, bone, flesh. He ducked under a plasma bolt, came up inside a soldier's guard, drove the blade through his spine, spun, blocked an incoming strike with his forearm guard, countered with a slash that opened another throat. They kept coming. He kept killing. Carvax rallied a final group behind the fountain, setting up a crossfire position. "On my mark, concentrated fire. We can..." Morrison appeared behind them. Each circled through the service tunnels, coming up through a maintenance hatch. His blade found 2 soldiers before they could turn. The third got his rifle up, but Morrison was faster, deflecting the barrel and breaking the warrior's neck with his other hand. Carvax spun, bringing his personal cannon to bear, but Morrison kicked it aside and drove his fist into the warlord's chest plate hard enough to crack it. Carvax staggered back, gasping. Blood leaked from his mouth. Morrison stood over him, not even breathing hard despite the carnage around them. "You were warned," Morrison said simply. Then he walked past, leaving the warlord broken but alive. The remaining soldiers fled, discipline shattered, pride forgotten. They ran because staying meant dying, and Morrison had proven that numbers meant nothing against perfect violence. Morrison accessed a wall terminal, pulled up the fortress schematics, found the prisoner holding area. His jaw tightened. They'd already been moved. He checked the transport schedules. 1 ship. Landing pad 7. Engines warming, he ran. Thessara saw him coming on the monitors and made her decision. She activated the fortress-wide comm. "All units, stand down. Do not engage the human. Repeat, do not engage." "My queen..." Zara looked at her in disbelief. "We still have forces, and I'd like them to live through the next 10 minutes, Thessara snapped. She switched to the transport channel. Pad 7, release the human prisoners immediately. No delays. No conditions. The transport captain's voice crackled back. "But, Your Majesty, our orders are now changed. Open the cargo bay. Let them go." Morrison reached the landing pad just as the cargo doors opened. 63 humans stumbled out, confused, terrified, but alive. They saw him and their faces transformed. Hope, salvation. "Jake Morrison?" an older woman whispered. They said you were dead. Not yet, doctor, he replied, checking each of them quickly for injuries. Can everyone walk? We can run if we need to, a young man said, trying to stand straighter despite obvious wounds. Morrison activated his emergency beacon. Extraction in 4 minutes. Stay close. Stay quiet. Above them, Thezera watched from her tower. Morrison had carved through 300 of her best soldiers, penetrated her fortress defenses, and achieved his objective in under an hour. And he'd done it without hesitation, without mercy, without fear. Carvax limped into the command center, his armor shattered, his pride destroyed. We should fire on them. The orbital cannons are offline, Thezera lied smoothly. Morrison disabled them during his assault. It wasn't true, but she needed Carvax to accept reality. Morrison had won. Decisively. The only question was how many more of her people would die if she tried to deny it. A human dropship screamed down through the atmosphere, guns blazing at automated defenses that Thezera had already quietly deactivated. It landed hard on the pad. Morrison ushered the prisoners aboard, counting each one, making sure none were left behind. He was the last to board. Before the doors closed, he looked up at the command tower, directly at the camera, directly at Thezera. He didn't smile, didn't gloat, just nodded once. A warrior's acknowledgement. Then he was gone. The dropship broke atmosphere, and Thezera finally allowed herself to breathe. Around her, the command center sat in stunned silence. Smoke drifted through the fortress corridors. Medical teams scrambled to treat the wounded. The casualty reports were still coming in, each one worse than the last. 217 dead, Zara reported quietly. 94 wounded. He cut through our best like they were nothing. Carvax slumped against the wall, his earlier arrogance replaced by hollow shock. I've fought in 40 campaigns, conquered 12 worlds. How does one human do this? Thezera didn't answer immediately. She pulled up Morrison's service record, the parts human intelligence had leaked over the years. Born in the slums of New Detroit, parents killed in a mining accident when he was 8. Raised by his grandfather, a veteran of the First Contact War. Enlisted at 16 with a forged ID, saw his first combat at 17. That was 20 years ago. 20 years of continuous warfare. 20 years of learning, adapting, surviving. He'd fought in every major battle of the human-alien conflicts. He'd been captured twice, escaped both times. He'd been declared dead 4 times, and every time he'd walked out of the fire. It's not just training, Thezera said finally. It's obsession. Morrison doesn't fight for glory or conquest. He fights because it's all he knows, all he is. She zoomed in on one particular image from his file. Morrison at 19, standing in the ruins of Settlement 12. The colony had been overrun by raiders. 3,000 civilians dead. Morrison had arrived too late to save them, but not too late to hunt down every single raider involved. It took him 6 months. He found them all. He's broken inside, Thezera continued. The war consumed him years ago. Now he's just a weapon that points itself at threats and doesn't stop until they're eliminated. That's why he's dangerous. He has nothing to lose and everything to avenge. Across the galaxy, aboard the dropship, Morrison sat with the rescued prisoners. The doctor, whose name was Linda Fraser, was checking his injuries despite his protests. "You've got second-degree burns on your left arm," she said firmly. "Plasma scoring on your ribs, and I think you cracked at least 2 bones in your hand. I've had worse," Morrison replied, watching the stars streak past the viewport. "That's what worries me," Linda said softly. She'd been a combat medic before her capture. She'd seen soldiers like Morrison before, the ones who stopped feeling pain because they'd learned to turn it into fuel. When was the last time you slept? Really slept? Morrison didn't answer. A younger prisoner, Danny Fisher, approached cautiously. Sir, I just wanted to say thank you. When they took us, I thought we were dead. Everyone said humanity had abandoned the outer colonies. Humanity didn't abandon you, Morrison said. Command did. There's a difference. So you came anyway? Without orders? I don't need orders to do what's right. Danny's eyes shone with something between worship and fear. This was the man from the stories, the ghost that haunted enemy nightmares, the warrior who'd become myth. But up close, he just looked tired, worn down by endless fighting, endless death. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Morrison, we've got a problem. 3 Thesseron interceptors just launched from their carrier. They're trying to box us in. Morrison was already moving to the cockpit. How long until we reach the jump point? 6 minutes? They'll catch us in 4. Then we buy time. Morrison slid into the co-pilot seat, his hands flying over the weapons console. Dr. Frazier, strap everyone in. This is going to get rough. The interceptors came in, fast, sleek predators designed to shred dropships. Their plasma cannons lit up the void. Morrison returned fire, his shots precise despite the violent maneuvering. He clipped one interceptor's engine, sending it spinning away. The other 2 split up, flanking. They're good, the pilot Carter Hayes muttered. Academy trained, probably top percentile. Probably, Morrison agreed. Then he fired the dropship's electronic countermeasures, flooding their sensors with false targets. The interceptors hesitated for 3 crucial seconds. Morrison didn't waste them. He locked onto the leftmost fighter and fired a missile spread. The Thesseron pilot tried to evade, but Morrison had predicted the dodge pattern. The missiles adjusted mid-flight. The interceptor exploded in a brilliant flash. The last fighter peeled off, retreating. Jump point in 90 seconds, Carter announced. We made it. But Morrison was watching his tactical display with narrowed eyes. No, something's wrong. What do you mean? They're backing off.
Exactly.
They don't back off. They swarm. They overwhelm. Morrison pulled up long-range sensors. His blood went cold. They're not retreating. They're clearing the blast zone. A massive energy signature appeared on the screen. Thessera's flagship, the Eternal Sovereign, had just dropped out of warp 3,000 kilometers away. Its main cannon was charging, the weapon capable of vaporizing a cruiser with one shot. They're going to fire on us? Carter's voice cracked. With their own prisoners potentially still aboard? They know the prisoners are safe, Morrison said. This isn't about them anymore. This is about me. He was right. In the Eternal Sovereign's command center, Thessara stood before the firing console. Carvax had been wrong to engage Morrison in close combat. But here, in the void, with a dreadnought's firepower, the equation changed. Target locked, her weapons officer reported. Firing solution optimal. Thessera's finger hovered over the authorization trigger. One press and Morrison would be atomized, the legend would end, the nightmare would be over. But her hand trembled. She'd watched him fight, watched him win against impossible odds, watched him defy every tactical prediction, every strategic assessment. What if he survived this, too? What if killing him only made him angrier, made him more dangerous? My queen? The weapons officer prompted. Your authorization? The dropship was 15 seconds from the jump point. 15 seconds from safety. Thessera closed her eyes and made her choice. Thessera's finger lifted away from the trigger. "Stand down," she ordered. "Let them jump." Carvax, who had dragged himself to the bridge despite his injuries, stared at her in disbelief. "My queen, we have him. One shot, and the human threat ends forever." "No," Thessera said, her voice carrying a weight that silenced every objection. "One shot, and we start something we cannot finish. Morrison isn't alone. He's never truly alone." She pulled up intelligence reports her advisors had been too afraid to show her. Human fleet movements over the past month, unusual activity around the border systems, encrypted communications that their best code breakers couldn't crack, and one name that kept appearing in intercepted transmissions. "Operation Reckoning." "What is this?" Carvax demanded, scanning the files. "This is what happens when you push humanity too far," Thessera replied. "Morrison isn't a rogue operative. He's the warning shot. If we kill him, we validate everything the human warhawks have been saying about us. We give them the excuse they've been waiting for." The dropship vanished into jump space just as her tactical officer-confirmed weapon lock had been lost. Thessera felt relief and dread in equal measure. Morrison was gone, but the greater threat remained. She accessed her private communication channel, the one reserved for diplomatic emergencies. "Get me Ambassador Grant." Now, across the void, Morrison's dropship emerged from jump space near the Human Defense Station Outpost Meridian. The prisoners cheered, some crying with relief. Linda immediately began coordinating with the station's medical team. Danny and others crowded around Morrison, thanking him, calling him a hero, but Morrison barely heard them. His mind was already on the next mission, the next threat, the next fight, because there was always a next fight. Commander Victor Shaw met him at the airlock, his weathered face grim. "Morrison, hell of a rescue. The prisoners are safe. That's what matters." "High Command doesn't see it that way. You went in without authorization, violated Thesseran territory, and killed over 200 of their soldiers. They're screaming for your court-martial." Morrison shrugged. "Not the first time." "Yeah, but this time they might actually do it." Shaw lowered his voice. "There's talk of a peace summit, real negotiations. Your little stunt almost derailed the whole thing." "Those prisoners had been in that fortress for 3 months," Morrison said coldly. "High Command knew where they were, knew what was happening to them, and did nothing because it wasn't politically convenient." "So I made it convenient," Shaw sighed. "I'm not arguing with your methods, Jake. I'm telling you the reality. You've got powerful enemies in the brass who want you gone, and after today, they've got ammunition. Let them come." But Shaw grabbed his arm as he turned to leave. "Listen to me. There's something bigger happening. Operation Reckoning. You heard about it?" Morrison's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Rumors only. It's more than rumors now. Fleet Admiral Catherine Burke is putting together a strike force. 20 dreadnoughts, support carriers, the works. She's planning a decapitation strike on the Thesseran home system. About time. Jake, it's a suicide mission dressed up as strategy. The Thesserans have triple our numbers in that sector. Burke doesn't care. She's betting that one massive show of force will break their will to fight." Shaw's grip tightened. "And she wants you to lead the ground assault." Morrison pulled free. "When do we leave?" "You're not hearing me. This isn't a rescue mission or a surgical strike. This is total war. If Burke launches this operation, millions die, human and Thesseran. The fragile peace we've built over the last year goes up in flames." "There is no peace," Morrison said. "There's just the space between battles, and the Thesserans will keep taking our people, keep pushing our borders, keep testing us until we push back hard enough to make them stop. And if we become the monsters in the process, Morrison's jaw tightened. I stopped worrying about that a long time ago. He walked away, leaving Shaw alone in the corridor. The commander watched him go, seeing not a hero but a weapon too sharp for its own good. Morrison had saved countless lives over the years, but he'd also lost something essential in the process. His humanity, his ability to see beyond the next fight. In her quarters, Linda Fraser sat with Danny and the other rescued prisoners. They were safe now, fed and clothed and treated, but the conversation kept returning to one topic. "He's like something out of the old war vids," Danny said, his eyes distant. "The way he moved, the way he fought. I've never seen anything like it." "I have," Linda said quietly, "seen soldiers like Morrison before, I mean, in the early days of the war. They're the ones who survive when everyone else dies. But survival has a cost." "What cost?" "They forget how to stop fighting. Even when the battle's over, even when they're safe, they're still at war in their heads. It consumes them until there's nothing left but the mission." An older man, George Palmer, nodded slowly. "I talked to him during the flight, asked him about his family. He didn't answer, just stared out the viewport like he was looking at something far away." "Because he's already planning the next operation," Linda said. "Already thinking about who else needs saving, what threat needs eliminating. Men like Morrison don't retire. They burn out or they die in combat. There's no middle ground." Meanwhile, in Thesserin space, Ambassador Grant's face appeared on Thesserin's view screen. He was an older human, gray-haired and diplomatic, but his eyes held steel. "Your Majesty, I received your urgent transmission. Ambassador, we need to talk about Jake Morrison." Grant's expression remained neutral. "What about him?" "He attacked my fortress, killed hundreds of my soldiers. This cannot stand. With respect, Your Majesty, you were holding human civilians captive in a military installation." Morrison responded appropriately. Thessera felt her anger rising, but forced it down. "Appropriately? He's a war criminal, a murderer, and if your government doesn't control him, this peace process is finished." Grant leaned forward. "Let me be clear, Queen Thessera. Morrison operates outside official channels, yes, but he also represents something you need to understand about humanity. We don't abandon our own, ever. Your forces took those colonists thinking we wouldn't risk a diplomatic incident to get them back. Morrison proved you wrong. So you condone his actions? I'm saying that if you want peace, if you want this summit to succeed, then stop giving Morrison reasons to act. Release any remaining human prisoners. Pull back from disputed territories. Show good faith." Thessara's hands clenched. "And if we don't?" Grant's smile was cold. "Then you'll find out why humans have a saying, 'Hell hath no fury like a Morrison scorned.' And believe me, Your Majesty, there are more like him. Many more. They're just waiting for permission to become what he already is." The transmission ended. Thessera sat in silence, processing the threat wrapped in diplomatic language. Morrison wasn't an aberration. He was a preview, a sample of what humanity could unleash if pushed too far. The peace summit suddenly felt less like an opportunity and more like a necessity. Because if Operation Reckoning launched, if warriors like Morrison were given free rein, the galaxy would burn. And this time, Thessera wasn't sure her empire would survive the fire. The Peace Summit convened on neutral ground, a space station called Haven's Rest that orbited between human and Thessaran territories. Delegates from both sides gathered in the Grand Hall, armed with proposals and counterproposals, each side testing the other's resolve. Thessara attended personally, a calculated risk that demonstrated her commitment. Ambassador Grant led the human delegation, his team of diplomats spreading across the negotiating tables like chess pieces. But Morrison wasn't there. He stood in the armory aboard the strike carrier Valiant Fury, checking his gear alongside 300 other soldiers. Fleet Admiral Burke had assembled her task force in secret, positioning dreadnoughts just outside sensor range of the Thessaran home system. The summit was cover, distraction. While diplomats talked peace, Burke prepared for war. "Final weapons check in 10 minutes, the sergeant announced. "We jump in 3 hours. Morrison loaded his magazines with practiced efficiency. Beside him, a young lieutenant named Chris Dalton watched with barely concealed awe. "Is it true what they say? That you've never lost a mission?" "I've lost plenty," Morrison replied. "Just not the ones that mattered." "This one matters, right? Taking out their central command?" "Ending the war?" Morrison paused. "If it ends the war, it matters. If it just starts a bigger one, then we're wasting lives for nothing." Chris frowned. "You don't sound convinced. I'm a soldier. Conviction is for politicians. I just execute orders." But even as he said it, Morrison felt the doubt gnawing at him. Something Linda had said during the flight back kept replaying in his mind about becoming monsters, about losing what made them human in the first place. At the summit, Thessara presented her proposal. Prisoner exchanges, border demilitarization, trade agreements. Real concessions that her military advisors had fought her on for weeks. Grant listened carefully, then countered with human demands. Reparations for destroyed colonies, guarantees of non-aggression, access to disputed mining systems. The negotiations continued for hours. Progress was slow but genuine. Both sides wanted peace, or at least wanted to avoid mutual destruction. Then Thessara's intelligence chief entered and whispered urgently in her ear. Her face went pale. "Ambassador Grant," she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of discussion, "I need you to explain why your fleet is currently positioning for an attack on my home system." The room went silent. Grant's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult me with lies. We detected your ships 2 hours ago. 20 dreadnoughts, full battle configuration. Either you're planning an attack while negotiating peace, or your military has gone rogue." Grant activated his personal communicator, his face darkening as he received confirmation. "Damn it, Burke. So you admit it." "I admit that Admiral Burke has exceeded her authority. This summit has my government's full support. Whatever she's planning was not authorized." Thessara stood, her guards tensing. "Then stop her. Call off the attack or this summit is over and we respond with everything we have." Grant was already on the comm to Fleet Command. "This is Ambassador Grant. I need immediate contact with Admiral Burke. Authorization code Alpha 7 Omega." The response came through tense and crackling. "Ambassador, Admiral Burke is maintaining communication silence." "The operation is already in motion." Aboard the Valiant Fury, Morrison and his team loaded into drop pods. The mission was simple in theory: breach the planetary defenses, infiltrate the command complex, eliminate leadership, extract. Simple, suicidal. But then Commander Shaw's voice cut through the tactical channel. "All units, abort mission. Repeat, abort mission. Stand down by order of Fleet Command." Confusion rippled through the soldiers. Burke's voice overrode him immediately. "Belay that order. We are committed. Launch in 60 seconds. Morrison stepped out of his pod. Around him, soldiers hesitated, caught between conflicting commands. Chris looked at him desperately. What do we do? Morrison thought about the prisoners he'd saved, about the countless battles he'd fought. about the line between warrior and weapon, between justice and vengeance. He thought about Linda's words, about Shaw's warning, about the cost of endless war. He made his choice. "Stand down," Morrison ordered. "Everyone out of the pods." "Morrison, what are you doing?" Burke's voice was sharp with fury. "Get your team ready, or I'll find someone who will." "No, ma'am. This mission is wrong. We go in there now, we destroy any chance of real peace. We become the aggressors. I don't care about peace. I care about winning." "Then you've already lost," Morrison signaled to his team. They followed him out of the launch bay, every single soldier choosing his lead over Burke's command. Other units saw and followed suit. Within minutes, the entire ground assault had collapsed. Burke's voice screamed through the comms, but Morrison had already cut the channel. He contacted Ambassador Grant directly. "Sir, ground forces have stood down. Recommend immediate withdrawal of all fleet elements." At the summit, Grant received the message and turned to Thessera. "Our forces are withdrawing. You have my word." Thessera studied him, searching for deception and finding only exhausted honesty. "And Admiral Burke will face court-martial for insubordination. This summit continues if you'll have us." Thessera sat back down slowly. "Let's finish what we started." 3 months later, the treaty was signed, borders established, prisoners released. Peace, fragile but real, settled across the contested systems. Morrison stood in civilian clothes on a colony world called New Providence, watching the sunset. He'd resigned his commission the day after defying Burke. No court-martial, no dishonor, just a quiet exit from a life he no longer recognized. Linda found him there, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this? Thanks." They sat in comfortable silence. The colony was rebuilding, refugees returning to homes that had been battlegrounds just months before. Children played in streets where Morrison had once fought for every meter. "Any regrets?" Linda asked. Morrison considered the question. "About standing down? No. About the years before? Too many to count." "You saved a lot of lives, Jake, including mine. And took a lot, too. The math doesn't balance. Maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe we just do the best we can and hope it's enough." Morrison smiled faintly. "When did you become a philosopher?" "When I started treating soldiers who forgot how to be human." "You're doing better, by the way. Sleeping more. Smiling occasionally. It's disturbing." He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Across the colony, children shouted in play. Families gathered for evening meals. Life continued, simple and precious and worth protecting. Morrison didn't know what came next, didn't know if the peace would hold or if old hatreds would reignite. But for the first time in 20 years, he wasn't thinking about the next battle. He was just watching the sunset with a friend, drinking coffee and remembering what he'd been fighting for all along. Not glory, not vengeance, not even victory. Just this. Quiet moments, safe homes, people living without fear, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough.